So, like I said before, Jason Garrett has a higher winning percentage than Jimmy Johnson. But Jimmy Johnson took over a horrible Cowboy team. Bill Parcells, 4 times, took over teams that need to be totally rebuilt. So his winning percentage is like 57, 58%. So this is where I defend Edelman, is that he was asked to block. He was asked to return kicks. He was asked to, in that system, sacrifice a lot. Manu Ginobili for the Spurs could have started for anybody and scored 24. But in the system, Popovich says you're off the bench. He averages 17 and a half. And it's interesting. Let me ask you, would you have traded your career for Calvin Johnson's?
No.
Boom.
No.
There you go.
No, absolutely not. And it people look at this different. And for me as a receiver, like when we used to be on the sideline and we played Detroit twice a year, you would watch Calvin and you knew he was going to go crazy because that was where they rode through. That was their offense. It was Calvin Johnson or nothing. They didn't really have a strong running game. We knew Matthew Stafford was going to put the ball in the air, and his best odds to a guy coming down with it was Calvin Johnson. Now, that doesn't discredit the ability and the reason why he was able to do that. It was because of the talent that Calvin possessed. So he was a tremendous and rightfully so a first ballot Hall of Famer. Where I hear you with Edelman is he does everything that every receiver is asked to do on most teams, which is catch the ball, run block, and then participate in special teams at some point in your career. The only issue that I have, and there really isn't any issue, it's a toss-up. I mean, you got people, in my opinion, is Edelman a Hall of Famer? It's hard for me to give him the head nod simply because we track stats in the regular season, but yet we give the totality of one's career, and it embodies and it encompasses every game that they ever played, which is including the playoffs for Edelman. And for Edelman, he's played a career in the postseason. And so, and he's produced. And with that, yes, I think you have to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, he made too many big plays in so many games that meant more than any regular season game for most receivers, that you start to see why you would give him a head nod for the Hall of Fame. But if we're going off of what everyone else is limited to, which is just regular season stats, I say no. I say no.
Yeah. It is funny, though, when you think of, and this is not because Calvin Johnson's great. The reason I use him, he's the best receiver in a bad team. I mean, like Randy Moss at some point moved around and found the right team. But it is, and Calvin's about as nice a guy as there is. But when you were playing for the Packers, and I always use the 7 minutes to go, there's a lot of junk yards for for solid quarterbacks. I mean, I love Matt Ryan, but Matt Ryan has thrown a lot of yards trailing late against prevent defenses. That's why right now, today, Matt's a no for the Hall of Fame. Not that he's not good, not that he didn't get to a Super Bowl, not that it's not close. But, man, there's a lot of junk yards with 8 minutes left in games, trailing big against prevent defenses. Go to your career in Green Bay. You average about 12 wins in your career. In the last 7 minutes of games for you, what did they mostly entail in your career? What would the offensive coordinator say in your last? What would he say to you?
Get your run blocking outfits on, because that's basically what we're gonna do. We knew it, and it's a benefit when you're winning. You love that when you're winning, but if you're a stat watcher, and as receivers, most of us are. I will say I was never really that sold on watching the scoreboard, but I cared. I did care, Colin. And in that moment of the game, you knew you were going to be eliminated from any opportunity to pad your stats. Right. While you look at your opponent across the field, and it is a Calvin Johnson, And it's like, I mean, shoot, he got 7 more opportunities or targets just because their team is down and they're in a situation where they have to feed him. They have to throw the ball. And so there was pros and there was cons to it. But again, like your first question, would I trade my career? No, absolutely not, because winning trumps all of that.
So when you look at all the wide receivers in this class, Devontae Smith is talented. He looks thin to me. I don't doubt he'd succeed, but it's a beating in this league. Jamar Chase, to me, has an NFL body. He looks big. He can like I said, Zach Wilson, Devontae Smith, first round, they look thin. I'm not denying their talent, but I mean, think about this. Go to your college weight, your pro weight. The difference between playing college and pro to you physically, if I was a young receiver and you were sitting down and mentoring me, and I said to you, Greg, what will be the difference physically college to pro? What is it?
It's the line of scrimmage. It's literally the battle at the line of scrimmage. Can you get off the ball? And then can you separate at the top of a route? And so when we talk about those things, yes, I know Jamar Chase and the Waddles and the Smiths and all those guys, the Bama boys. And for me, I like Rashad Bateman. Like, he's one that kind of doesn't get talked about. Obviously, he's up there with those guys, not as high, but he's a physical guy, 6'2". He's not as fast as all the other guys, but he has really good hands, can run really good routes, can separate, and he's physical. Something that you look for in a receiver when he doesn't have the speed. It doesn't mean he's not fast, but when you compare him to those guys, it's different. And even Elijah Moore, like, those are guys that I look at because I know, like, Jamar Chase is going to be successful. Like, and I believe Devontae Smith, he has a chance to be really special, but his size, he has to be in the right system to where they kind of protect his lack of size.
Yeah. You know, it's back to the Edelman thing. It's interesting. I just maybe because I'm kind of fascinated by the whole thing. If go back to your playing days, was there a receiver? I'll give an example. Was there a corner you faced, and he maybe didn't end up with the most picks because he always had to guard the number one? And you get burned. If I have to cover Greg Jennings or a great receiver, I'm going to get beat occasionally. You're going to win some of those battles. But was there a corner that always got the toughest assignment, maybe didn't play in a winning team, that you struggled with? Kind of the Edelman situation where he has to be asked to do more as a corner. He has to be asked to tackle because the D-line stinks for the team he plays for. He has to cover the number one receiver. Because I do think the NFL, if you ask players and you ask the media, there's a different set of guys who are really respected. Who was a corner that gave you fits? That just the way he played, maybe a bad team, nobody talked about, and you hated facing him?
Antoine Winfield. Now, he wasn't always on a bad team. And he was a corner that, in my opinion, was so overlooked because he lacked size, and that was it. Everything else was big. His heart was big. His hit was big. His brain was big. He was extremely smart. He knew exactly where he needed to be, what he needed to do, and to put himself in a position to be successful. We see it with his son with Tampa, and the curve, the growth, and the maturation of his football IQ. And it's because of his dad. Like, his dad did everything for the Vikings. I mean, he was a safety playing corner. He was a linebacker playing corner. Like, you could not. He was a nuisance. I couldn't stand playing against Antoine Winfield.
So he could guess your routes. He knew where you were going.
Oh my gosh, Colin! There was one game. We play. This happened all the time because we played him twice. He's literally yelling out. We're in a 3-by-1. He yelled out Jordy's route, my route, and driver's route. Like, hey, look, do this. And he's telling all the other corners to do what to do. And for some reason, it was like they didn't trust him. But he was where he needed to be. And if they would have listened, they would have picked us off so many times because he just knew what to expect. He was, in my opinion, he was their version of Charles Woodson. Like, he was that special, in my opinion, Antoine Winfield.
Yep. But again, the reality is if you don't play in a lot of big games, you don't get on TV, you don't get talked about, and then you ask Greg Jennings, who's a nightmare? He's like, that guy. It's funny when you talk to players about that. They always say, listen, man, who you guys, there's always a 24 guys in the league, and people are like, and I ask this question all the time to great players, toughest guy to block. You know, the Steeler guy, Harrison. If you ask tackles, little tiny Kent State undrafted guy, they're like, nightmare.
Yes.
It's like blocking a bulldozer down a hill. And he doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, it's amazing who gets press. Where'd you go to college? Do you get love from the media? Good stuff. Greg Jennings, Fox Sports. Good seeing you, buddy. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.